Right now, somewhere in your kitchen, your yard, your bathroom, or your animal pen, there is a fertilizer more powerful than anything on the shelf at the garden center, and you are probably throwing it away. Here is the number that should stop you cold. The fertilizer industry in this country is worth $24 billion a year. Every dollar of that is built on one idea that you cannot feed a plant without buying something. But farmers fed the world for 4,000 years before the first synthetic fertilizer plant ever opened its doors. They used what they had, and what they had worked. In the next 20 minutes, you are going to learn 13 of those methods, not folklore, not guesswork. Methods backed by peer-reviewed science, agricultural universities, and 2,000 years of proven results. Some of them will cost you nothing. A few of them will genuinely surprise you, and at least one of them is going to make you look at your bathroom in a completely different way. Before we get into the first method, let me show you how to read a struggling plant, because the diagnosis changes everything about which of these you reach for first. Yellow leaves at the bottom while the top stays green. That is nitrogen. The plant is stripping its old leaves to feed new growth. New leaves yellowing with green veins still showing. That is iron or magnesium. Scratch the stem with your thumbnail. If the tissue underneath is green, the plant is alive. It is not dead, it is hungry. And 9 times out of 10, what it needs is already on your property. Here's the other thing most gardeners over 50 have been doing wrong for decades. We wait for soil to break down fertilizer before the plant can use it. That process can take 2 weeks. But in 1952, scientists at Michigan State discovered something that rewrites the whole game. Nutrients sprayed directly on leaves travel through the plant at roughly 1 foot per hour. Up to 65% of foliar nitrogen is absorbed inside 25 minutes. A suffering tomato doesn't have to wait 2 weeks for granular fertilizer to mineralize. Spray it on the leaves at sundown and it can be greener by morning. That is the principle behind the fastest methods on this list. We are not just feeding the soil. We are feeding the plant directly right now through its leaves. Keep that in mind as we go through each one. If this is the kind of content that makes your garden more productive and your input costs lower, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week on Plant to Profit, we dig into the methods that actually move the needle, the science most gardeners never hear about. 1. Wood vinegar, the 2,000-year-old Japanese secret with 65 peer-reviewed studies behind it. Let's start with the one that has more research behind it than almost anything else on this list. They call it mokusaku in Japan. The Chinese have used it for 2,000 years. Korean farmers swear by it. The Japanese government registered it as an official soil improvement material in 1986, and almost no one in America has heard of it. When you burn wood slowly in a low-oxygen environment, the same process that makes charcoal, a brown smoke rises off the pile. Cool that smoke down and it condenses into a dark liquid. That is wood vinegar, also called pyrrolignous acid. It contains over 200 active compounds: acetic acid, methanol, phenols, trace mess minerals, a whole pharmacy captured straight from the smoke. In 2025, a meta-review published in the journal Agronomy pulled together 65 peer-reviewed studies covering 33 different crops. The average yield increase across those studies was 21%. Plant biomass went up 25%. And it suppressed fungal disease at the same time. You cannot easily make this at home, so you buy it. The good stuff comes from bamboo or hardwood aged at least 3 to 6 months. A quart bottle costs less than a small bag of synthetic fertilizer. The recipe: 1 part wood vinegar to 200 parts water, about 1 teaspoon per gallon. Spray on leaves or pour at the root zone. For seed soaking, use the same dilution and soak for 24 hours. Critical warning: going too strong reverses everything. Above 1%, it starts killing weeds. Above 3%, it becomes a herbicide. Less is more. If you have tomatoes hit with early blight, peppers with leaf spot, or melons fighting fungus, this is the first liquid to reach for. 2. Aspirin, the medicine cabinet trick that primes your plant's immune system. This one sounds like folklore. It is actually some of the best understood biology in modern plant science. In 1990, a team of scientists at the Waxman Institute published a paper in the journal Science. They showed that when a plant gets infected by a virus, fungus, or bacteria, its first response is to produce a compound called salicylic acid. That compound then travels through the whole plant, switching on something called systemic acquired resistance, the plant's broad-spectrum immune system. The active ingredient in aspirin is acetylsalicylic acid. Drop 1 in water and it breaks down into salicylic acid. Spray that on a tomato leaf and you have just told the entire plant, trouble is coming, get ready. The plant responds by producing compounds that puncture fungal cell walls before the fungus even shows up. The whole defense system gets loaded and ready, like locking the chicken coop before the coyotes arrive. The underlying immune priming science is rock solid. Hundreds of peer-reviewed papers back it up. For the recipe: 1 regular 325 milligrams uncoated aspirin tablet dissolved in 1 gallon of water. Add a single drop of dish soap so it sticks to the leaves. Spray every 2 to 3 weeks during the growing season. Best on tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplant, broccoli, and cabbage. 2 mistakes to avoid. First, coated aspirin does not dissolve correctly. Use the cheap generic. Second, doubling the dose burns leaves. Above 500 milligrams per gallon, you get damage, not protection. Stick with 1 tablet. And the timing detail nobody tells you. This is a preventive treatment. Spray before the plant gets sick. Once fungus has its hooks in, the immune system cannot undo the damage. Applied once a month from transplant on, the plant fights its own battles before you ever see the first spot on a leaf. 3. Liquid seaweed extract. The most studied biostimulant on Earth. If you only ever buy 1 plant tonic in a bottle, this should be it. Liquid seaweed extract, usually made from a brown algae called Ascophyllum nodosum, harvested off the coasts of Maine, Nova Scotia, and Iceland, has more peer-reviewed research behind it than any other natural plant input on the market. Seaweed is loaded with natural plant hormones, cytokinins that signal new shoot growth, auxins that drive root development, gibberellins that control flowering, plus betaines and amino acids that help a plant survive heat, cold, drought, and transplant shock. This is not fertilizer in the NPK sense. It is a biological signal. A 2013 study at Dalhousie University showed that within 24 to 96 hours of a seaweed application, the plant's own hormone-producing genes start firing harder. A South African researcher showed that cabbage transplants dipped in seaweed had 33% more leaf weight 4 weeks later. Citrus growers in Florida use it to push trees through drought. Vineyard managers spray it after frost. You can buy commercial liquid kelp at any decent garden store, or if you live near the ocean, rinse storm-cast seaweed twice in fresh water to remove salt, chop it, half fill a bucket, cover with water, ferment 2 to 3 weeks, strain, and apply. Application rate 1 to 2 ounces per gallon of water for foliar spray, once a week through the growing season. Early morning or evening, never midday. Here is the critical mistake, going too strong. A 1985 study found seaweed at 1 part in 100 actually slowed root growth on tomatoes. At 1 part in 600, the same product boosted root growth by 60%. The plant hormones in seaweed are active at tiny concentrations. Use less than you think you need. 4. Hydrogen peroxide. The emergency root rescue sometimes a plant is not hungry, it is drowning. And the difference matters entirely. When you overwater a tomato in clay soil, or a low spot holds water for 3 days after rain, the roots sit in stagnant, oxygen-free water. Within days, fungi like Pythium and Phytophthora, which already live in your soil, waiting, multiply and eat the roots from the inside out. The leaves wilt even when the soil is soaking wet. By the time most gardeners notice, half the root system is already mush. This is one of the few times when reaching for a chemical is the smart move. And it is a chemical you probably already own. Drugstore hydrogen peroxide, the brown bottle, 3%, about $1 at any pharmacy. When hydrogen peroxide hits soil, it breaks down into plain water and pure oxygen. That oxygen does 2 things at once. It oxidizes the rot fungi to death, and it reoxygenates the suffocated soil so healthy roots can breathe again. The recipe: 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide per cup of water for a soil drench. Pour through the root zone until it runs out the bottom of the pot. For raised beds, use the same ratio in a watering can and saturate the soil around the base of the plant. Repeat every 3 to 4 days for 2 to 3 weeks until you see fresh white root tips on a careful pull test. 3 hard rules. First, never use 35% food-grade peroxide undiluted. It will burn the roots off within 20 minutes. Use the 3% drugstore kind only. Second, do not add compost tea or any microbial product immediately after. Peroxide kills good microbes the same way it kills bad ones. Wait at least a week before adding any biology back in. Third, never mix peroxide with bleach under any circumstances. 5. Milk spray. The 2-cent fungicide that matches chemical treatment in 1999. A Brazilian agricultural scientist named Wagner Bedial got tired of watching organic farmers lose their squash crops to powdery mildew. He ran an experiment. He sprayed zucchini plants with diluted cow's milk, 10% milk, 90% water, twice a week. The water control. Disease severity hit 56%. Synthetic fungicide brought it down to 9%. The milk spray, 10%. Statistically identical to the chemical, a 2-cent solution doing the same job as a $40 bottle. Bedial published his results in the journal Crop Protection. Australian researchers replicated the work on grapes. New Zealand wine country adopted it commercially. The Brazilian government started recommending it. Here is what is actually happening. When milk dries on a leaf in sunlight, the proteins and riboflavin react with ultraviolet light to produce small amounts of oxygen radicals. Those radicals collapse the cell walls of fungal spores within hours. A protein called lactoferrin ruptures fungal membranes directly. And lactic acid bacteria on the leaf surface compete with the fungus for nutrients. This is a triple-action fungicide that costs a splash of milk. The recipe: 1 part milk to 9 parts water. Skim, 2% whole. The fat content does not matter. The protein does. Spray to dripping on the upper leaf surfaces on a sunny morning between sunup and noon. The UV light activates the chemistry. Spray at dusk or under cloud cover and almost nothing happens. Reapply every 7 days during active infection and after rain. Best on cucumbers, squash, zucchini, melons, pumpkins, grapes, roses, and tomatoes. 2 things to avoid. Plant-based milks do not work. There is no lactoferrin in oat or almond milk. And going too concentrated, 50% milk gets sticky, attracts mold, and clogs your sprayer. Stick with 1 to 9. 6. Comfrey tea, the deep-rooted fertilizer factory you only plant once. There's a plant most American gardeners walk right past. Fuzzy leaves the size of a dinner plate, purple bell-shaped flowers. A taproot that goes down 5 or 6 feet. It is called comfrey, and in the 1950s, an Englishman named Lawrence D. Hills determined it might be the single best plant fertilizer you can grow. Hills spent 20 years at his research farm in Essex, England, testing different varieties. One stood out, strain number 14, known ever since as Bocking 14. Sterile, so it would not take over your garden. Rust resistant, and carrying 2 to 3 times the potassium of farmyard manure. That deep taproot mines minerals from subsoil where most garden plants cannot reach. Potassium, calcium, silicon, magnesium, and pulls them up into its leaves. Cut the leaves 4 or 5 times a season, and you have the richest plant material in your whole garden. The better extraction method, the one Hills himself wrote about. Pack chopped comfrey leaves tightly into a bucket. Place a brick on top. Drill a hole in the bottom. Set the bucket up on bricks over a collection jar, no water added. Over 2 to 3 weeks. The leaves break down under their own weight. A dark, almost odorless concentrate drips out the bottom. That is your gold. Dilute it 15 to 1 with water. Pour at the root zone of any flowering or fruiting plant. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, potatoes, dahlias, fruit trees. Do not use it on lettuce, spinach, or root crops. The high potassium causes them to bolt. Buy Bocking 14 root crowns from an heirloom seed company for a few dollars apiece. Plant them once. They will feed your garden for 30 years. 7. Fish hydrolysate. Squanto was right, and the science proves that the Pilgrims survived their first winter not because of pumpkins. They survived because a Wampanoag man named Tisquantum taught them to bury a fish under each hill of corn. That was not superstition. That was the original liquid fertilizer. When fish protein breaks down, it becomes amino acids. And amino acids are nitrogen the plant can drink. Immediately. No mineralization required, no 2-week wait. The roots pull it up almost as fast as it dissolves. Modern fish hydrolysate is the same idea made faster. Whole fish, ground up and treated with cold enzymes that break the proteins down without heat. The result is a thick brown liquid that smells exactly the way you would expect, with an NPK around 411 to 522, plus 16 amino acids, fish oils, and natural chelates that help the plant absorb minerals. Note the difference between hydrolysate and fish emulsion. Emulsion is steam cooked. The heat destroys the proteins and burns off the oils. You keep the nitrogen but lose most of the benefit. Hydrolysate is cold processed and keeps everything. To apply, 1 teaspoon of finished fish liquid per gallon of water. Pour at the root zone or spray on leaves once a week during the vegetative growth stage. Stop once your plant starts setting fruit. Excess nitrogen at that stage gives you giant leaves and small tomatoes. A quart of commercial fish hydrolysate runs about $15 and lasts a backyard gardener 2 full seasons. 8. Rabbit manure tea. The only manure on earth you can use fresh. Most manure has to be aged. Chicken manure is so hot with ammonia that applied fresh it will burn roots off a tomato plant within 2 days. Horse manure carries weed seeds. Cow manure needs 6 months minimum. Rabbit manure is different. It is the one and only common manure on earth you can apply straight from the animal. Same day with no aging, no composting, no waiting. Old-time farmers called it cold manure. The nitrogen is bound in a slow-release form that does not burn roots. The pellets are dry, almost odorless, and crumble naturally into soil. Rabbit manure runs about 2 to 2.5% nitrogen, 1.5 to 2.5% phosphorus, and roughly 1% potassium. Compare that to cow manure at 0.5% across the board. Rabbit pellets carry roughly 4 times more nitrogen per pound. To make the tea, a couple of cups of pellets in a pillowcase or burlap sack, tied at the top, dropped into a 5-gallon bucket of water for 2 to 3 days, stirring once a day. Pull the sack out, dilute the tea to the color of weak coffee, about 1 part tea to 10 parts water, and pour at the root zone. Visible greening in 3 to 5 days, no burn, no smell. Works on tomatoes, peppers, leafy greens, brassicas, anything in the vegetable garden. For houseplants, use half strength. One caution, skip the manure for a couple of weeks if your rabbit is on antibiotics or dewormers. Those compounds can pass through. 9. Wood ash. The ancient soil amendment that can save or wreck your garden, every wood stove in this country produces. At the end of winter, a 5-gallon bucket of one of the most powerful natural fertilizers on earth. Most people throw it on the driveway to melt ice. Hardwood ash from a clean wood fire is roughly 25% calcium carbonate, 4 to 10% potassium, and 1 to 2% phosphorus, plus trace boron, copper, manganese, and magnesium. It will change your soil chemistry within a month, for better or for worse, which is why you need to know the rules. Rule 1. Wood ash raises pH. If your soil is already neutral or alkaline, pH 7 or above, do not use it. If your soil is acidic under 6.5, wood ash is a gift. Rule 2. The application rate is about 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet per year. One full 5-gallon bucket spread over a small backyard garden. More than that tips the chemistry too far. Rule 3. The plants that love it are brassicas, asparagus, beets, tomatoes, stone fruits, and lawn grass on slightly acidic soil. Rule 4. The plants that hate it are blueberries, rhododendrons, azaleas, hydrangeas, camellias, and conifers. Wood ash destroys the acidic soil they need. Rule 5. Do not put wood ash on potatoes. There is a soil microbe that causes potato scab, and wood ash favors that organism. You will get a beautiful crop of ugly potatoes. Burn only clean firewood. No treated lumber, no painted wood, no glossy paper, no charcoal briquettes. Apply in fall or early spring, rake it into the top inch or two, and water it in. Used right, that bucket from your wood stove is worth $50 of soil amendment. 10. Lactic acid bacteria serum, the Korean farming secret that costs a cup of rice. In the 1960s, a South Korean farmer named Cho Han-kyu developed a complete system of natural farming inputs that has since been formalized by the University of Hawaii into published agricultural extension documents. His system has trained over 18,000 farmers in more than 30 countries. One of his most powerful recipes captures something that is already living on the surface of every cabbage rind, every grape skin, every piece of fruit in your kitchen: lactobacillus. The same family of bacteria that makes yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, and sourdough. Cho figured out how to capture and multiply them in a quart jar. Stage 1. Rinse a cup of uncooked rice twice in dechlorinated water. The second rinse comes out cloudy and milky white. Pour that cloudy rinse into a quart jar, fill it 2/3 full, cover with a paper towel, and set it in a dark cabinet at room temperature for 3 to 5 days. The smell will turn slightly sour. That is the wild lactobacillus multiplying. Stage 2. Skim off the thin film on top. Pour the middle layer into a clean half-gallon jar. Add 10 parts whole milk to 1 part of that rice starter. Cover with paper. Wait 3 to 7 days. The mixture separates. White curds rise to the top. A clear yellowish liquid sinks to the bottom. That bottom liquid is your finished serum. It contains roughly 100 million to 1 billion live lactobacillus per milliliter. Strain off the curds. Refrigerate the serum for up to a year, or mix it 1-to-1 with brown sugar to keep it shelf stable. To apply, 3/4 of a teaspoon per gallon of water. Spray on leaves, pour at the root zone, or add to your compost pile. Lactic acid bacteria suppress fungal pathogens, solubilize phosphate locked in the soil, eliminate odor in compost, and have been documented in lab studies to inhibit Pythium, Botrytis, and Phytophthora. A gallon of milk and a cup of rice gives you enough serum for a full season of treatments. 11. Stinging nettle tea, the free fertilizer growing along your fence line right now. There is a weed growing along almost every fence line in America. It bites you when you brush past it. Most people consider it a pest. The French call it ortie, fermented in a bucket, and have used the result as fertilizer for centuries. Stinging nettle has one of the highest free amino acid concentrations of any wild plant. Nitrogen-rich asparagine and arginine dominate, plus iron, magnesium, calcium, copper, zinc, and silica that the plant pulls up through its deep root system. Its estimated NPK sits around 511. A 2021 study published in the journal Sustainability tested fermented nettle extract on green beans. The result? Nettle extract matched commercial urea for stem height and significantly raised iron levels in the leaves. A free fertilizer from a weed matching a synthetic. The recipe: wear gloves. Cut about a pound of fresh nettles, stems and leaves both. Do not pull the roots. Stuff them into a 5-gallon bucket, fill it 3/4 with rainwater or dechlorinated tap water, cover loosely, and set it downwind of the house. Stir every couple of days. After 10 to 14 days, when the smell shifts from sharp to earthy, strain the liquid, compost the spent leaves. To apply, dilute 1 part nettle tea to 10 parts water for soil drench, 1 part to 20 for foliar spray. Use on vegetative stage plants every 2 weeks, best on leafy greens, brassicas, and tomatoes in early growth. Do not use on legumes, which fix their own nitrogen. Do not use on root crops, which respond poorly to high nitrogen. Stop using on tomatoes once they start setting fruit. 12. Vermicompost tea, the underground army that outperforms regular compost Norman Arancon. Spent the last 20 years at Ohio State University and then the University of Hawaii running field trials on worm compost. Trial after trial, he published the same finding: vermicompost, the dark crumbly castings from red wiggler worms, outperformed regular compost on yield, growth, and disease suppression. Tomatoes, peppers, strawberries, lettuce, marigolds, even houseplants in the lab. The active ingredients are not just nutrients. They are humic acids, fulvic acids, and a specific community of plant growth-promoting bacteria that worms cultivate in their guts. Arancon showed in 2003 that humic acids isolated from worm castings produced measurable growth response at concentrations of just 250 to 500 parts per million. To make the tea, put 1 cup of worm castings in a mesh bag. An old sock works fine. Suspend it in a 5-gallon bucket of dechlorinated water. Add 1 teaspoon of unsulfured molasses to feed the bacteria. Run an aquarium air pump through a stone at the bottom of the bucket for 24 hours. The aeration is what multiplies the beneficial bacteria. Without it, you just get muddy water. Use the tea within 4 hours of pulling the pump. Dilute 1 to 5 with fresh water. Pour at the root zone or strain through cheesecloth and use as a foliar spray every 2 weeks during the growing season. One honest note, the peer-reviewed evidence on the tea form is thinner than the evidence on solid castings. A quarter cup of dry castings top-dressed around a plant gives more consistent results than the tea. If you have to pick one, pick the solid. The tea is the bonus when you want fast root zone delivery. Also, do not spray manure-based compost teas on leafy greens you will eat raw. 13. Biochar, the 1,000-year soil investment. When Spanish conquistadors traveled up the Amazon River in the 1500s, they found patches of soil unlike anything in the surrounding rainforest. Black, deep, extraordinarily fertile. The natives called it terra preta, black earth. The Spaniards assumed it was natural. It was not. 500 years later, soil scientists discovered that pre-Columbian Amazonian peoples had been intentionally building those soils for at least 1,000 years before. European contact. They mixed pottery shards, fish bones, manure, and crucially, charcoal, the leftovers from low-temperature fire pits. Today, those terra preta patches still grow crops at 3 times the productivity of the surrounding jungle. The active ingredient is biochar. Charcoal made by burning wood at low temperatures with very little oxygen. The result is pure carbon with a microscopic sponge-like surface. A single gram of biochar has roughly the surface area of a tennis court. That sponge does 2 things in soil. First, it holds water. Terra preta soils retain moisture better than any other tropical soil ever measured. Second, it holds nutrients and microbes. Bacteria colonize the pore spaces, fertilizers stop leaching away, and the carbon stays in the soil for thousands of years. Here is the catch almost no online article mentions. Fresh biochar is an empty sponge. Put it straight into your soil, and it will actually suck up the soil's nutrients for the first year, often reducing yields. You must charge it first. To charge, soak fresh biochar for 48 hours in something biological, compost tea, diluted fish hydrolysate, or worm casting tea. Or mix it 50-50 with finished compost and keep it moist for 2 weeks. Once charged, mix it into the top 6 inches of soil at no more than 5 to 10% of soil volume. Speed of results. You will not see a dramatic effect the first season. By year 2, the soil holds moisture longer. By year 3, the bed is producing visibly bigger plants on less fertilizer. By year 10, that bed is more productive than the day you built it. Cornell University's Johannes Lehmann has documented this effect across decades of research. This is not a quick fix. It is a 1,000-year investment that pays compounding returns. 13 methods. Every single one of them working long before the first synthetic fertilizer factory ever fired up. And every one of them building the soil at the same time it feeds the plant, which is something a bag of blue crystals will never do. A few final rules to take away from this. Apply foliar sprays in the early morning or evening, never in midday sun. Dilute everything. More is almost never better. Test on a few plants before committing the whole garden, and pay attention to what the plant is telling you. Yellow older leaves, nitrogen. Yellow new leaves with green veins, iron or magnesium. Black bottom on the tomato, calcium and irregular watering. Wilted plant with wet soil, root rot, get the peroxide. The kitchen, the bathroom, the wood pile, the chicken coop, the worm bin, the fence line. Every one of them is a free fertilizer factory. The grower who knows how to work all of them never buys a bag of fertilizer again. If this video changed the way you think about what your garden actually needs, do 2 things right now. Hit the like button. It tells YouTube this kind of content is worth pushing to more growers. And subscribe to Plant to Profit so you do not miss what is coming next. Every week we go deeper into the systems, the science, and the methods that turn a backyard garden into a real operation. We will see you in the next one.